All right, man. So you know what? It's been a year since we've been back here, and this is crazy. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so much has changed, and this is exciting. Jay and I were talking just yesterday about what makes a good interview for me, or what helps me ask good questions, is if I authentically want to know the answer. And when I saw that you got this, I'm like, I have so many questions, and I want to know how it works. I want to know how it sounds. I want to know why you went this route, because when we talked last time, and folks at home can check out that last video, you did have a console originally in this room that you
the Soundcraft 3D.
Right. And so you got rid of that. You switched to a hybrid model, which you were so excited about a year ago.
It was great.
But we have so much to do. Don't adjust your sets. This is not a repeat. So there are some other new gear here, but talk to me about that day when you decided, shit, I need an API console. Because I even think, honestly, man, that last time we were here, I don't even think you had API pre's.
No.
Like I think, because I remember seeing after we were here that you got a couple of the 512s. So when did you get the API tattoo on your?
Well, geez, I mean, to be honest, I'll tell you why I did it.
Yeah.
I wanted, at the end of the day, I really just I had always wanted to break things out and to be a little bit more of a console-oriented studio.
Okay.
I think, to be honest, I was really enjoying sort of the hybrid setup, but there were a couple limitations that were kind of like eating away at me. But I just, I kind of wanted to go there. I don't know. I really kind of wanted to take that next step.
I mean, in a way, you had the SSL summing system.
Yes.
So you're sort of there, almost.
Yeah, I was getting there.
Yeah. And so when you had an option to get a console in your studio, was this the only option, or were there other things you looked at?
No, there was several other options.
Okay, like what?
The new Rupert Neve.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah.
That was considered, and the Neve Genesis.
Okay, is that like in production?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So and the Neve Genesis is roughly the same size as this, and so is the Rupert Neve.
Okay.
Design one.
Yeah.
The Rupert Neve design one, I wasn't as stoked on. The API had just I'd read so much about it. I talked to people that had owned it, and everybody was just thrilled.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that was sort of it, was just the idea of working on a console and working in a bit of the older way. And I just kind of grew out of the hybrid mentality that way. I really wanted a larger format console. And also I wanted other people to be able to work in here and not have to wrap their heads around
here's setup.
My setup.
That's smart.
And
cool.
And it was a little bit commercially driven that way.
Right.
Where I also I don't plan on being in this room forever. I was planning to build.
Yeah.
And I wanted a centerpiece that would be more inclusive to people.
Okay.
As opposed to it being a little bit more of the mad scientist cave. Setup, which is dope.
Yeah.
But I wanted something that was a little bit more, like I said, inclusive.
I don't know if it was you that posted this on Instagram or if it was Bob at Grand Avenue. Somebody talked about the benefits of a console being that kind of community vibe. Maybe it was you that posted that.
I posted that.
Yeah, and so explain that about how, before we were here, it was Mike's spaceship.
That's right.
But then now you have all the guys around here touch the knobs and seeing the music.
And getting into it.
Yeah.
And that's just the truth. When you're sitting around a desk and you're working in sort of a more focused, smaller, tighter sort of situation like that, it really is you're separating yourself from the artist that you're working with. That's just a fact. As I'm tinkering away in my little thing and nobody can actually get into the sweet spot and nobody but me really knows this mouse and all that kind of stuff. Nobody else can kind of get into the music or make adjustments or
that's a really great point.
Be included in the process. And so that was rolling around my mind when I made this choice. The reason I went with the 1608 though over the Genesis and the other, the big thing with the Genesis was it's kind of it's like a computer hybrid.
Oh, okay.
And that just kind of scared me.
Yes. You
know what I mean? Whereas this is just like an analog console, and the computer aspects of this I can continue to update without this being married to it.
Yeah, totally. And it's very module too, right?
Well, and the other thing too was recall, is that I did want to be working analog, but I wanted to have recall, and all the EQs are stepped.
Okay.
Whereas
so you just make
every other console had variable EQs.
Right.
And I was like, well, I'll never be able to recall.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
and these all came with it?
Yeah, so this is what they call the loaded 1608.
I see that. So I know that they also make the box, right? What's the difference between the box and the 1608?
It's smaller.
Is it? Okay. It's not 16 channel?
No, I think it's more of a summing box. Like it's a smart design. Yeah. It would definitely be more in the sort of production room thing. So I think you get like 4 channels to record with.
Okay.
That have EQ and preamp on them.
Okay.
And then I think you get another like 8 channels to sort of sum on.
Okay.
And then I'm pretty sure that at the end of that you get like a 2500 kind of built into it.
Right.
Like their compressor, right? So.
Okay. It's like a giant channel strip or something.
I mean, I guess I was just sort of like trying to remember how everything went down. But yeah, sort of the big idea was just that I wanted other people to be working here, and I also wanted other people to be sort of more included in the process.
Right.
And then that kind of just. Rolled into, well, in order for me to do that, it's a larger format console, and then like, what should I get?
Right.
And what's actually going to be kind of special? And then, the other thing too with the API, why I went there was there's a lot of SSLs around. There's a lot of Neves around.
Yep. That's a good point.
But there really aren't that many APIs.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. So I want to ask what the role that the Outboard stuff plays. But just first, can you take me through a channel here? What am I looking at?
Sure. Okay. The way the channels work is this is not the signal flow.
Okay.
This is just set up sort of for ergonomics.
Okay.
So right here, this is your preamp.
Okay.
And then after your preamp, you hit here.
And this would be exact same as a 512?
No, this is like their 200 series.
Okay.
Like, have you ever seen them? They're like the little guys?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Yeah, so that's
Are they sonically different than a 512 or?
I mean, they're a little vibier, to be honest with you. I think the 512 is a little cleaner.
Okay.
So you get your basic stuff here. You get your, Phantom mic on.
Yep.
So if I take this out, then it turns into a mixing console. But if I put this in, it turns into a tracking console.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's awesome.
So, and then there's your pad. And then after that, we go into here, which is your panning, but it also has like a high pass.
Oh, nice.
Okay. And this turns into your
it's just a one knob high pass?
Yeah. And it's at 80.
Okay. Cool.
And then there's your insert. So if you want to, so first you hit your preamp, then you hit here, then you hit your insert. Mm-hmm. So then that goes out to like your Pultec and comes back in.
Okay.
And then you go through your sends. Okay.
Okay.
And then after that, you go through here.
And where are the sends going?
Wherever you want them to.
Okay. Okay.
They return here. This is all the returns for the effects.
Okay.
If that's what you want.
Right.
This here is your busing section, and that goes into this channel. Here, let me get my little warrior back up there. So this busing section goes into here.
Okay.
So this is program. This program button goes to my 2 mix, which is located right here. Mm-hmm. If I have program switched off, this is functioning, but it's not routing anywhere because it's not going to my 2 mix. So then I could tell it to be bust. So you can basically take like several channels, mm-hmm. route them to 1 and 2, and then they come up here on 1 and 2, and then you turn these channels on, and you say, and so now, the solo. So now you're going out of here, and then you're going in here. So what this allows you to do is take things like, if this was like a 4-piece string section, I could run it through my distressors, and then bring that all, same way you do in Pro Tools, but they're just doing it hardware.
Okay.
And then you bring that up here, and then that goes to your master section.
And there's 4 of those.
There's 8 altogether.
Oh, right. But 4 stereo. Okay.
4 stereo.
Oh,
yes.
okay, cool. Wow. Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. I haven't actually been using that too much. I just got it wired in, but to be honest with you, it's other than drums, I haven't had a reason to sort of sum. And I also do so much of the sort of summing in the computer still.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Like I'm not working all of a sudden. It's not like I got this thing and now all of a sudden I'm like working like it's 1970. You know what I mean? Like it's
throw
still
your computer.
Yeah.
So okay, so the 16 channels go into Pro Tools.
Yes.
And then what are you doing in Pro Tools, and when do you send it back out?
Okay, well, there's two different ways to work this. So like I just worked on a session with a band called the Chronicles Dub Trio, and the way I worked that was I didn't even have the computer on for the session. We were just recording off a tape.
Okay.
So basically, I used all the EQs and compressed and inserts, but the tracking went down where I basically turned on the insert on every channel. Okay, across the board.
Okay.
So my signal would flow out of the inserts into the tape machine.
Okay.
Or it could be into this piece of gear and then into the tape machine.
Okay.
And then out of the tape machine into the insert returns. So basically the signal flow going to the tape machine was just controlled by this and this. And then the faders are basically your return.
Okay.
Because the tape machine is now a part of your effects loop.
Right. Okay.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that's the way I monitored. And then when I eventually put it into the computer, I just basically pulled everything out of the patch bay and then just printed everything off the tape machine. But for the purposes of the recording part of that, it was just kind of going through all the gear and then out of there and then returned on the insert returns. And then, so when we wanted to listen things, you can just sort of solo track or bring up your faders or whatever. And this is working independent of what's being printed because this is post insert.
Okay.
Yes.
What makes you choose these over? Because I don't really know much about the 560.
Well, they're just graphic. They're really great on things like kick drums and bass.
Where you just want to be more specific or something? Okay.
And there's no real rhyme or reason to why they're laid out this way.
Right.
There's a reason why I keep it this way, but this is just the way it came.
Okay.
But because I normally have most of the bulk of what needs the most attention on the first 12 channels.
Right.
And then these guys, when I'm mixing, might not even be on, but in tracking, I'll use them all the time.
Really?
But
Okay.
because they're like on these weird graphic sliders, I'm never going to be able to recall on them, ever, so I don't really use them for mixing.
Oh, I see, because they're not stepped at all.
Not at all.
So 12, and so that's the equivalent of these.
Yeah.
And it's in such a small area. So just a tiny little movement makes a change?
Oh, it's big. Yeah.
Jeez.
That's
so crazy.
They are nice because they kind of notch things out. So you can be a little bit more particular. So if you're there's a snare drum, but you want to be a little more woody, like a little more knock to it, you just kind of grab your 1K, your 2K, your 500, somewhere around there, kind of do that.
That's really cool.
But all things said and done, I love these guys. They're really easy to use. They're really musical.
Right.
Really wide for the most part. That's the sort of the API design, right? Is that the Q of an API preamp, the more that you boost, the more narrow the Q.
Okay.
So unless you're in filter, but if I boost 16, that Q gets really narrow. But if I go down to 2, it goes like that. Oh. And it's got a wider.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the way those guys go.
And so what happens now with old sessions that you have? Are you able to take these old sessions and bring them into here and mix on them?
Yeah, and I've been doing that, and it's been a total pleasure.
Yeah. And so you can only send 16 channels, so in a way you're kind of summing from Pro Tools to the board?
To the board, yeah.
So how would you decide what to do? Because I know you did that similar with the SSL.
Yeah, all things said and done, the effects returns aren't that different in terms of their return sonics as this. So the console really is 24, but you're just going to be using these and they don't have inserts.
Okay.
So that should be noted because basically if I got another 8 Apollo, I could be mixing on 24 channels returns. It's just that these don't have inserts.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So, sorry. What was your question?
So you can take a session from Pro Tools, 16 channels, and send it into
here? And that's what I've been doing. So, So for the most part, I kind of, to be honest with you, I kind of normalize everything to 0.
Okay.
Just because of recall, it's still a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if somebody messages me a week later, I really don't want to be worrying about if the fader should be here or there.
That's smart.
Because that's a bit of a. The last thing I want is to get some kind of anxiety about something bullshit like that.
Yeah.
and then wondering oh, what's wrong? But generally what I've been doing is just bringing up drums, bass, guitars, almost the exact same way that I did with the SSL, but on this.
Okay.
Yeah. The only thing that's a little bit different right now that I would like to change is I am hoping to get another Apollo, because I'd basically like to get all of my outboard effects just sort of normaled to these.
Okay.
So that when I'm working in the computer and I say send to the BX10, it just, like, I know that it's just coming up here.
Right.
When I say send to the M7, it just goes there, the Dimension D, the Space Echo, whatever the effect may be, it's just there, and then I can actually just be working these like you would normal instruments or vocals or whatever.
And so is there a sound, I think I know the answer to this, but aside from the EQ, is there a sound of the console?
Yeah.
That you can tell?
And that's been the most massive change.
And what's that do? Like, I really don't know. If you can put it into words.
Yeah, I can. Like, I mean, I think there's a difference in sound in several ways. There's also, number one, there's the cumulative sound of everything, sort of having the same sonic sort of stamp on it. But the tone of the board, particularly when I mentioned sort of interrupting at the insert point.
Yeah.
But if you actually just sort of use the entire channel and hit tape, it's a fucking dream.
Really?
And I've been really kind of struggling to put this, to sort of create analogies. And the best one that I can create is, or sort of use to explain this is, when you'd watch a video with somebody like Eddie Kramer or some, Phil Ramone, some throwback guy, and then they would talk about miking. They'd be like, or they talk about how they recorded some record that you think is just astonishing. Yeah. They'd be like, yeah, man, we just used the console and we just chose some great mics and we just fucking set it up and it was all great. Yeah. And I've been doing this for a long time, working with computers and not working with a caliber or a console of this caliber. Yeah. And I always watch those and kind of went, yeah, whatever. Right. You're full of shit, or you're talking about some world that I don't understand. I get it.
Really?
I really, really get it now.
That's awesome.
It's things that I used to struggle for are just inherently a part of the sound of this now.
Really?
In terms of the color, in terms of the width, in terms of the depth, in terms of the way that the dynamics and the saturation of a sound, those characters and how any sound will sort of have them. Right. It's blowing me away. It was a head fuck. It was a complete
that's what I was gonna say.
Head fuck.
It's
when I started working with this.
It's fascinating, but it's also frustrating that we don't understand why. Because we try to. It's easy to understand what this does. It's easy to understand what even one of these do. But to say that it's just going through these electronics and then there's depth all of a sudden. Yeah. And it sounds like the records we want to make.
But you also, there's certain ways to look at it, and there's op amps and transformers throughout the entire thing. There's two of them in each one of these. There's one here, there's one here, there's two in the master section. If I include a 525, there's another two in there. Right. So, whereas, when you're working in sort of the hybrid way, you're like, oh, well, I will use one API piece of gear in my situation. Right. This is no, this has been designed for this to couple with this and couple with this and couple with this and couple with this and end up
Interesting.
And I think of it like a motorcycle almost. It's you build this really cool custom motorcycle, but it's always kind of leaking oil and it never really runs right. Right. It's this has been slaved over to work.
Yep. That's a really good point.
To work as a whole this way, and that's something that there's a lot of cool things about working sort of hybrid and using this preamp for this and this preamp for that, because you have this enormous palette. Yeah. But the struggle is that you have this enormous palette of all these sounds that aren't designed to be working together. Right. So that's a cool thing, but there's also the fact that I just plug in a bunch of fucking mics right now. I send it to that tape machine, and everybody just listens and goes, "That's fucking great." Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, that's a really good point, because the trend, and when we were here last year, what we saw was a different preamp. You know, like each mic gets its own preamp, and then some cool little compressor or EQ from an independent company in a 500 series. Is there? I think when people think about every single mic and every single instrument going through the same path, it sounds kind of boring, and it sounds like it would be more fun. But what you're saying is that this produces better results.
I would say that, yeah, I agree with that.
That's
100%.
really interesting.
Like, I mean, and I was really behind that method before, and that's the way I was working, and I was really sort of spending a lot of time creatively trying to choose all these combinations that sort of fit best. And now I'm like, fuck that. I'm gonna set up a bunch of mics. Everything's just going through this. I'm gonna deal with the band, and that's really cool. Sort of just where it ends. I think having that history has really sort of helped me work with this. So if I do want to break out of this, I do now have this entire, like little stock of experiences with different preamps and different pieces of gear to pull out different sounds. But I'm certainly using a little bit more guitar pedals and shit like that, as opposed to when I was working then, and it might have been like a outboard piece of gear. I'm kind of breaking out of things a little bit that way.
That's cool.
But with that said, it's been it was worth it. And I was really skeptical when I pulled up sounds the first time and I heard it. It was such a difference, and I was a little bit like nervous. Oh. Because I was, I'm sitting here and I'm listening and I'm like, holy shit, is this, like, do I like this? This is so different. Yeah. And do I even know how, like, I've been doing this for a long time. Do I even know how to wrap my head around this completely new tool? Yeah. And I'm trying to use my experience to be like, is this right? Like, and then I just realized that, like, they know better than I do. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Like, this brand has been doing this for a long time.
There's reassurance in that.
Yeah, and you could probably just like trust it.
Yeah, that's hilarious. When was the first windage from when you got it to when you first made a record with it? Like, did you give yourself some time, or did you have a band in?
No, of course not.
No, of course not.
That.
So, that's right. I saw you post online. Yeah. So you had a real client in.
I brought Billy Moon in, and everything was just starting to get wired. We just tracked on it, so it wasn't a huge thing. But it was very sort of bare bones. Like, not all. Like, now I think everything except for a couple very weird things aren't wired in. Okay. But like these channels, like you can have preamps in here. Those they're not wired in yet.
Oh, okay.
But
preamps, if you want to like bypass these, or
no, if you want other ones, if you want. Oh, but they can also be whatever you want. They're tied into the effects. Oh, okay. Or they're not. Like, there's a whole bunch of weird routing capabilities with this, so these can be completely separate, and they can basically just operate like a lunchbox. Okay. But if you want, they can actually just be tied into your effects end. So if you wanted to put like a couple Moog delays in here, they would just be tied into this. Oh, okay. So because I was going to ask you, why aren't these in here? Well, they could be. Okay. The only reason they're not is because they're just wired in the patch bay. But okay. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it was Billy Moon, and it was sort of a make it work situation. Like, I don't think I could really even monitor that well. I think I had to monitor through the computer for that one. Right. It's kind of good to do it that way, though, right? To be forced to learn it. Yeah, and I was game for it. They were game for it. I was just sort of like I can get it going. You're going to get great sounds. Yeah. But it wasn't until I worked with that dub band, Chronicles, and that was the first one where I like sort of tracked a tape, and I did the whole thing. Yeah. And that floored me because I brought up the session for mixing, and I think I had like one plug-in on the drums. Oh man. Yeah, when I was mixing it, like, I was really heavy-handed with everything tracking. More than you were in your previous setup? Heavy-handed? I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think that's just a culmination of me being, increasingly experienced in the room. More confident. So everything's becoming a little bit more and more heavy-handed, like this is what I'm doing with this. But so the drums didn't really have anything on it. The guitars and the bass and the keyboards, the only reason they had more on it was because they weren't like a static sort of sound. Like the drums were always kind of doing what the drums were doing in that genre.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we were doing a ballad one song and then like a heavy rock song. They were all dub.
Yeah.
So everything was sort of just in the pocket, controlled playing. But the guitars changed a lot.
Okay.
And the keyboard sounds changed a lot. So those things needed to be mixed, but if they were a more static sound, I probably would basically just be doing like volume moves.
That's awesome. And you did our buddy Matt Paxton, his new EP.
Yeah, that was all.
And that's through this. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that turned out great.
Sounds so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you use the M7?
Yeah, that's all M7.
Oh man, yeah, it's so great.
That thing sounds massive.
I know. You don't do a lot of singer-songwriter stuff now. I know you do a lot of the band stuff, but it was great to hear that through the console. Just him and the guitar, and it sounded wicked.
Yeah, and that was, I think we sent it off to mastering, and right away the mastering engineer was like, "What did you do this with?"
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, I just got a 1608." And he's like, "Yes, you did." Like, and I've
So
had that
crisp.
a couple times now with people coming in. They're like, the difference isn't hype. And I think that's one of the things that I was a little bit reluctant to go this way, because so much of this industry is based on hype. And this isn't the first, heavy hitter sort of console I've worked on. I've worked on a lot of Neves and SSLs, and I had that giant Soundcraft. But they're always sort of like these short little, 1-day sessions, 2-day sessions, and I never really wrapped my head around it, and they always came back, sort of did the same thing. And, for the same reasons that I kind of built my own studio, I bought this.
Really?
And that's like, I just need to have a place where I can really wrap my head around this and learn it. Because, I'm not an intern at Revolution or Noble or something like that, you know what I mean? Where I'm spending this time day in, day in, day out. If I want to really kind of get into this headspace, I gotta fork over the money.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, you said something about the Apollo when we were here last, and I didn't own an Apollo when we were here last.
Yeah.
And I got one a couple months after, and there's something that has stuck with me forever, and I think it applies to this and to everything else. I asked you about the Apollo, and you said I don't think about it. That's what you said.
And I still stand by that.
I just don't think about it. And that, I didn't understand it at the time, but now that I have it, when you're making a record on a weekend or whatever, and you're stressing about the mics, you're stressing about all these things, it's nice to know, and if something plays back and it doesn't sound right, it's either the player or it's me as the mixer or something, but it's not this.
It's not this.
And I love that. I love that thinking. And it's that bottleneck that you talked about last time we were here. And it's that thinking now that I start to think through, let's put everything in my studio where at the end of the day, I'm the problem. Either it's a great track or it's me.
Yeah, and you want to be there.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
I think a lot of people will use gear as a bit of a crutch sometimes or whatnot. It's like, oh, this would be great, but we're just working within our means. And I understand that. And money isn't fucking, it doesn't grow on trees. But with that said, it's up to you, what you want.
Yeah.
But I am a firm believer that in music, like that's not to say that really cool shit can't be made on other things, but you're really you gotta go for that aesthetic if you're going there. If you want to do like the Tascam Porta Studio, like whatever 488 kind of thing, that's awesome. Yeah. And like all the power to you. But if you kind of want to get into this, there isn't much middle ground. Yeah. I don't think you kind of really got to go a little bit further. Yeah. So now that we've talked about the console, what is the purpose of the Outboard? When do you go to this stuff? When do you go to the Mercuries, which we saw last time? Yeah, I'm not using as much other EQ as I was, obviously, because I really, there were certain things I swore to you about on the last one. Yeah. Like the Mogs. And I still think they're the shit. That's right. But they don't talk to this as well. They loved my SSL, loved them. Yeah. This Buzz though, I'm not selling that ever. Wow. And I got a great deal. This thing retails for like $12,000. Did this come from Jacasa? That came from Jacasa. Yeah, okay, Darren mentioned that. That's cool. Yeah. We didn't get to see it last time we were here. Oh, fuck, I love it. This is a mastering EQ? Or? Yeah. Okay. And so where do you use this in your system? Always in the main bus. Almost every time I mix, The mix goes into here, and then goes into the SSL, and then comes back. And that's on like 95% of everything.
What's the big deal with this?
You got to hear it. Like, I mean, I can't really. Yeah. But you know, you bring this on and do a little boosting, and it's just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, it really brings it to life.
That's awesome.
I haven't even used the EQs on a couple things that I've done recently, but the unit just sounds so good that I still use it.
Right.
But it is a beautiful thing when you actually do start to boost. But if I get it right beforehand, then fuck it.
Yeah.
And then I always kind of use this, there's like a transformer saturation thing that just sort of drives the transformers in it a little bit.
Oh, cool.
Just kind of glues things together in a nice way.
Yeah.
Kind of adds a little shine.
Cool. So you don't really necessarily use it for mastering. It's a mixing thing for you.
Yeah. But it's a stupid expensive mixing thing. But I got it for a good price.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
So I kind of treat myself.
The Mercury, the Pultec styles, you don't, because that would be sort of a mix bus thing, right?
Normally, that's what they're called, like program equalizers.
Right.
So they're originally designed to be on that.
That's cool.
They kind of stay stuck on my Coles 4038s.
Oh, okay.
I just really like it. Like, I always just sort of boost a little bit.
Cool.
I tend to attenuate a bit. I mean, it is the one thing I really like about these, even more than boosting and everything, is having the ability to sort of like really cut into things.
Yeah, you know, that's totally true. I mean, I've been really getting into the Pultec plugins, and it's nice to like take that top end off of things.
Like the UAD H1, I think it's called.
Right. Yeah, that's just two filters.
I use that constantly.
Really? I was just demoing that today.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I'll put that on my.
Yeah, well, I mean, that whole
list.
Pultec thing is really nice.
Yeah.
Like the Waves one I'll use to cut, I don't usually boost with it.
Right.
Because it just came with the Waves package I bought, but the UAD ones I'll do anything with them.
Totally.
They sound great.
Yeah. And so you had said something online. I want to talk about this. I was actually just at a buddy's studio recently, and I was playing with his, that's a 4000, right? Or G? Yeah,
it's from that board.
Okay.
But this is an X-Logic version, but it's the same thing.
Okay, so you were telling me, or you said online something about
it's from the G. Yeah.
It's finally working the way you want it to work with this. Explain that.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure. Phil Demetrio sort of piped in and said, "Oh yeah, that thing needs a really solid analog path before it." And I think that's sort of it. Is that the magic didn't really happen. Like, that thing's used to, like, I guess that's the thing. So many of these pieces of gear are pulled out of consoles.
Right.
So they were like, again, I'll harp back to what I was talking about earlier. They're meant to be used in conjunction with a bunch of other pieces, sort of doing a thing.
Right.
So when I was using this with my X-Desk, I don't think there was sort of the harmonic content. There wasn't enough sort of mojo going on, basically, layman's terms, to sort of get this thing going.
But why not? Because they were the same company.
You'd think so, but it wasn't the same.
Yeah.
I don't know. I strap it on this now.
Yeah.
And I'm using it really aggressively now, and I fucking adore it.
Really?
Yeah.
And so that's before or after this?
After.
After it. Okay. Okay, cool. That's really
and it just sings
aggressive.
now.
Yeah.
It just sings like, and it's the weird thing is again, like the Mogs, like just certain things are kind of working with this that weren't, or vice versa.
Right.
I don't know.
No, that's cool. Yeah, it's funny, man. Like, I know your stuff and I know your mentality so much, and then I see you posting things for sale. I'm like, man, what's wrong with him? Like, he said so many nice things. I have it on video. The Chandler.
Yeah.
The Chandler.
It sounds great.
500.
It sounds great. And again, like, I wouldn't be selling that if it wasn't for the fact that I have 12 EQs that are, like, I'm kind of falling in love with just the simplicity of using this
That's really
as API.
cool.
So before, there would be no way in hell that I would ever sell that because it did a thing. But with this now and everything kind of blending together and how quickly I'm mixing now and everything, I'm not as excited about it because I really like what this is doing as a whole, and so I'm just sort of I'm using a different tool now.
You know, it's kind of a responsible way to do it because you do think. I mean, one of my favorite things about it about the night before a recording day is dreaming. Okay, what mic am I going to put on this guitar, and then what pre, and then where's it going to go after that? And that's kind of fun, but at the same time, if this was my full-time gig, that time is money, and it takes a lot of time to go through that thought process. And I think there's something cool about it goes into a channel and it's
done.
Yeah.
Like I said,
that's
I've
cool.
always fantasized about all those old cats sort of saying shit like, we just set up some mics.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like, the fuck are you talking about? Like, and now I
I've
get
thought
it.
that too. Yeah, I know what
Yeah.
you mean. Yeah, that's funny. And so the compression too, you're using compression on tracking. You still use
Tons,
this guy
yeah.
and the
Federal still
864?
gets tons.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I love it.
Yeah, and so you'll run a bass through here,
Yeah.
and then you'll use one of these as an insert.
Yeah, I usually actually pair this up with the LA2A for bass.
Is there any EQ that you're doing as an? I don't see any EQ that you have as an insert, right?
No,
Otherwise,
because
other than the
other
mixing
than
stuff.
these guys and the master.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about the?
The Alicia?
Oh, this is a compression. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
right.
Okay. And that still has a home.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Really? And on like a bus or?
That guy gets used on like drum stuff constantly.
Oh, okay.
It'll either be the rooms or the overheads.
Okay. I think what's a testament to some of this gear is when if people were to watch the video from before
Yeah.
and then see what you still have a year later after getting this, it's a real testament to the stuff that made it through the purge.
And I mean, I'll also say that, like, I mean, I'm not as, I mean, there's some pieces that I've got my eye on right now when I saw those other ones, but like, I'm really kind of like, just to reaffirm that point, they're really shining or they're not
Right.
with this system.
Right.
And it has almost less to do, like, I guess that's, I'm sort of humbled by this thing. It's like,
Right.
this likes what it wants and I'm going to feed it that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's sort of the way that I've been working with it.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was very much a little bit about me driving this machine
Right.
completely.
That's
and
cool.
This is a little bit more of a partnership.
Well, it is pretty intimidating.
Yeah.
Jeez. Well, I'm excited to come back here next year when you got your Neve console. And you fix everything.
Well, not a Neve. I'm probably gonna stick this out, but they got the other half.
Oh, there's something you can add on to this?
Oh, another
like
16.
a sidecar? Oh,
And they butt
Mike.
right together, and it turns it into a full 32 channel console.
Oh, man. Well, folks, join us next year for episode 3 of the Threshold.
That's what I've been
That's awesome.
really sort of drooling about.
What do you use the 2 distressors on? Is that tracking or mixing?
Almost always tracking.
Okay.
I've used very, very little outboard compression when I'm mixing.
Oh, okay.
I try to use plugins as
Yeah.
much as I can.
Yeah.
If I do something when I'm mixing, I'll usually print it back.
Yeah.
Again, because recall is just so finicky on these things. Like
Right.
the only thing that's stepped is this guy.
Okay.
But yeah,
no
so
kidding.
like, I mean, generally
Yeah.
this is the only outboard compressor that I use when I'm mixing.
Right.
And again, that's one of the reasons why I've kept kind of striving to be a little bit more heavy-handed. You know,
Yeah. You got a retro since we've been here, too.
that thing's
What's the
ridiculous.
difference between, sorry, Jay, I'm screwing with you here. What's the difference between the retro, this one, and then the one we saw at Jamie Barnes' place, the stay level?
The stay level. The stay level is based off of a stay level. This is based off of, I think it's like the original Universal Audio. Like before there was an 1176, there was a 176.
Oh, okay.
And it was a tube compressor, and that's what that is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's like if you pull this out right here, it goes back to the original like attack setting that was on the 176.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that's the basic thing. But that thing sounds fantastic.
What do you use that for?
Vocals, just constant. I mean,
is
you
it-
can use it on anything.
Yeah.
You know, I would
those
love to have
guys.
6 or something like
Really?
that. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
amazing.
Those are pricey, eh?
Yeah, then it's not cheap.
Yeah, I was looking into that. It's funny when I saw one of those. I don't know if it was Crispin who has one or if he has the stay level too. But anyway, I was looking at that. I said, "Oh, it's a smaller version of the stay level. I wonder if it's cheaper." But it's not. It's the opposite.
It's the opposite,
more expensive.
actually. Yeah. But yeah,
Damn
no,
it.
it's really, really nice. I don't use it on bass that much because I tend to like my bass tones a little bit grittier.
Okay.
But vocals, snare drums, you know, if I'm recording like a solo cello or something,
Yeah.
like it's beautiful.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What is this? I've never seen this before.
Okay, so that's a Roland Dimension D,
I was
but
wondering.
it's not a Roland Dimension D.
Oh.
It's a TB Dimension D.
Yeah.
So it's the same Roland chips. Some guy down in the States, I forget what his name was, but runs this small little company. And it
Yeah.
used to be sort of a build it yourself.
Okay.
And then he just ended up building them
building them.
himself.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a Dimension D.
And it's
same
just
chips,
this? Does
same
it
chips.
have
and everything
anything
like that.
elsewhere? Or is this? It's all built.
It's
in
all
here?
built into there.
Jeez.
So
and it can be stereo.
Yeah, so it's built stereo, so you can send it left and right into it. But if you want to do sort of like a stereoizing trick with a mono signal, like a bass, you just send it into the right channel and you click this up, and then you take your so mono in to the right, and then you got your left and right, and you can kind of just hear it going, you know, that kind of thing. And then it's kind of got like an all buttons in.
Oh, nice.
Sort of thing.
And this is really handy too, right?
Yeah, it's great.
That's cool.
You know, I was Cohen, who's my assistant, who works here. We were mixing his record. He's got a band, really great band called the White Crowleys. And he was coming in here and kind of fucking with the mixes a bit, and he just strapped it right onto the vocals, like the left and right of the vocals, and just sort of went for it, which is something I wouldn't normally do. But he loves, like, it's a psych band and everything, and he was
I love
like,
that
he was
sound.
like doubling down on it, you know, and I was like, holy shit, and it came in, and I was like, this sounds fucking awesome.
That's awesome.
So
I didn't know that they made that. Can I ask you what's the price range for that?
I think it was about $6.
Oh man, I love that sound. In fact, that was one of the UAD plugins. They have a great Dimension D plugin. And I've demoed it.
I mean, that plugin I'll use all the time, but but I won't use it as like a center effect. Like I won't focus anything around that because it, in my opinion, it doesn't cut it enough. Whereas this is great, but I use that plugin constantly. Like on strings or a piano or a bass, I'll sneak it in there as opposed to having to set this up. But in a situation where it's like usually strapped to a vocal and it's going to be a big part of it, that's the ticket.
So this has a stereo out.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh man.
So it's stereo in, stereo out, but it can operate in mono to stereo out.
Yeah. That leads me to realize that there's a lot of your outboard effects that you got rid of too, right? I mean, you had a Lexicon.
I got rid of that. That's 60, the PCM 60. But I didn't get rid of a ton of stuff. I still have the M7.
Right, and you're still running the AKG?
The AKG I will never get rid of.
Echo? Yeah, okay.
And the Space Echo I would never get rid of.
Maybe I was thinking of something else. But yeah, I knew you had the Lexicon.
That was the big one that I had. But you know, with that said, I've been earlier, I've been using a lot of pedals.
That's awesome.
Like those Fairfield pedals are on everything now.
Yeah, I did this thing the other day, and I mean, it was so, I don't know why, I just did it for fun, but I was recording a guy's vocal, and it's very like 60s, 70s type of sound. And we had a great tube mic on him, and I thought I'm going to throw up another mic right next to him, like a 57 or SM7 or something, and I ran it through a Memory Boy. And then into the pre, and just like a quick little slap back, and then in mixing, it was like, that's the sound I would have like gone for using a couple buses and throwing up a delay or something. And it was so fun to do something like that. And it sounded great.
You can't, I mean,
it was so fun.
I don't know. I hardware effects are great. And like I was working on a project recently, and we struggled to use the Echo Boy, which I use constantly, and it sounds awesome, to try to do what the Space Echo does. And everybody just sort of like was like, this isn't cutting it. And I was like, oh, fine, I'll wire it all up. And I got it going. And like in a minute, they're like, really? This is the sound.
Oh, man.
And it just...
That's true.
It's an unfortunate thing in a lot of audio that you get what you pay for. I mean, there's a lot of people that are doing cool shit on budget stuff, but like I said, it kind of defines your genre a little bit. There's only so much you can do. And also, when I want things to sound a certain way that way, like I got to get like a shittier thing. And I shouldn't say shittier. What I mean more is just that costs less.
It's crazy though, when you have such expensive gear and then you grab a $60 pedal.
All the time.
It's so funny.
All the time.
It's so funny. Well, one of the questions I asked you last time, and you lied to me, I asked you, what do you want? I said, what do you not have that you want to get, and what do you want to add to your studio? And you said, I don't know, I'm pretty content. No, is there something that you said that you've got your eye on a few things, or what does something like this now changes your philosophy of what to buy next, because you want it to work with
like as far as this sort of, like I wouldn't mind a couple more compressors just so when I'm recording a full band,
everything can,
because I run out now. And again, like, not that it's a huge deal by any stretch, but it would be nice if everything just sort of got what it should. But again, so many, when you're recording a band, so many things change, so sometimes it's better for it just to not have a comp on it. But I wouldn't mind it.
You said another Apollo?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that, because that way I can actually, like I said, just sort of normal. Like, are you normalizing like where the patch bay is automatically going away?
Oh, okay. Right.
So basically, you can wire up, like a lot of my patch bay right now, like the direct outs of this are automatically going to the Apollo.
Yes.
So when I'm running a session, if I ever want to record a channel, I just hit record on that channel. I don't have to patch it in.
Right.
But if I want to break that connection, then I patch it in and I can go somewhere else.
Right.
But yeah, so another Apollo, so all the effects are just sort of normaled here.
Right.
So that when I'm working a session and I go BX10, I just go to, well, that goes to 16.
Yeah.
So 17, 18.
17, 18.
And then I want
It's
the
always
M7,
there.
and I go
That's
19, 20.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's always up, it's always on.
Yeah.
Would be really, really nice. And then
That's
that way
cool.
I got these 16 channels open.
Yeah.
Mics, I've been starting to think about mics again. I haven't thought about mics in a while. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't, like there's that AEA 44 that just left Canterbury. Like I would have loved that.
Yeah.
I've been looking for one of those for a couple years.
It's smart, eh? We often forget about mics.
Yeah.
It's the first thing to touch the artist. We
yeah.
forget about it because of all these knobs. And
Yeah, I know, and
it's
they're so much fun.
Yeah. It's true. No, it's a good point.
But
I
I've
know-
been kind of getting into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
And guitar pedals, I'm kind of getting into that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Even more so. Like I just got the Fairfield Meat Mod, their delay. But I wouldn't mind some more older, like,
pedal.
Electro Harmonix ones or Death by Audio. Like, I don't know, there's just so much cool shit out there.
I always keep an eye on reverb, and I'll budget myself like $60 a month just to grab
something.
Something like the Dodd pedals are $20, and they're hilarious.
Yeah.
Like they're crazy.
Well, I just grabbed one of those Mooger Fugger, the low pass.
Oh yeah.
And that thing's phenomenal.
Yes. Yeah.
And I grabbed Electro Harmonix vocoder, which is really cool. But I don't know, some more weirdo type things like that.
That's smart.
Because I'm not, like, again, this is just working. So now I'm kind of like, fuck it. Let's just make things weird on the other side.
Yeah, that's a great place to be.
Yeah.
Well, man, congratulations on this console. I love that day when you got it and you were posting the pictures of unloading it from the truck.
Yeah.
And all of your engineer friends were commenting as if more people comment on that when you had your kid, right? Congratulations, Michael. We're so proud of you. I sent you well wishes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I did
cards
that.
in the mail.
When are you going to have a reception for a shower?
I know.
A stag and dough.
Console shower.
Man.
People were pretty stoked. It was nice that everybody was just kind of like, oh, that's great. You like went for it. It's funny, like it's also funny that a console sort of still demands something from people.
Yeah.
It commands something.
Yeah.
And with all the different ways of working, there's still something about it, and that response kind of tells me that it's still tried and true.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, not only my experience, where I'm like, no, it's really great working on this, but it's funny, it's still sort of out there.
Yeah, and I mean, it's something that bands from all over the country would be looking to. They want to record on an API, and
well, and that was another thing that I looked up a lot, and I was investigating a lot of studios that were successful around the world, and there's a lot of producers doing stuff, but they're going to other studios using other people's consoles, and like all the studios that are kind of like lasting. And I'll also say this, which is probably an interesting thing. To tie in with a lot of the people that you film, is a lot of people are doing shit on their own, and I think it's great. And I run a studio as my livelihood, and part of this was everybody's going to need a place to track.
Right.
Everybody's like, people need a place to track drums.
Yeah.
They need it to sound great. And that was one of the things that I wanted to kind of separate myself from that market a little bit.
That's a great business point.
Still kind of focus on being affordable. Definitely think like the number one thing that people will be needing for the next 20 years is a place to record.
Yeah.
Their beds. Yeah. And that's not going to go away.
No home studio will have a 1608.
No.
It just doesn't make sense. But I think that's so smart. I think it's so cool. And it's I've always wondered what are the big studios, what's their mentality going to be to compete against the home studio? And I think the best way is to not compete with it, is to partner with them. To encourage them to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's great.
Beautiful.
And from an artist perspective, and sort of being empathetic to that process, like, if you want me to be here so you don't have to do this job, that's fine. But if you're totally comfortable doing this job, then spend your days tweaking things and getting into it.
Yeah.
I also find that a lot of people that do home recordings are a little bit more like, they like come in here and they're like, oh fuck, thank God I don't have to deal with that shit anymore.
Yeah, I know.
But I would also say that before I bought this, I also was very attentive to Toronto in terms of the fact that, everybody's saying the music industry is getting destroyed, and then I saw Revolution and Noble and Union get built, and then I watched them become packed.
Right.
And busy.
Right.
And like people are still making records.
Yeah.
So a lot of the concerns, I think, about the way that the trajectory of the music business, a lot of those sort of like really like darker sort of I don't see that happening.
I don't think the industry's dying. I think it's changing.
I think it's changing.
And I'm starting to see more hope than I am the opposite.
Yeah, much more, right?
Yeah, it's exciting. Well, congrats, man. Thanks for having us again.
Yeah, good to end on.
Yeah, we're gonna come back all the time. Anytime you get something new, I love to see it. Because I know it the second you get. I know before your wife knows. Like I see a picture of it, and I'm so excited. So
awesome, buddy.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, love it. Take care.
Take care.
Thanks, Jay.